Welcome to Click for Biology. In this video, we're going to be looking at the group of organisms known as the prokaryotic organisms. Now, you may recall that we've already stated that prokaryotic organisms are those which are better known as the bacteria. These are much smaller than eukaryotic cells, perhaps a 50th of the size of a eukaryotic cell. And we've already said that one of the defining differences between a prokaryote and a eukaryote is that in a prokaryotic cell there is no nucleus. So let's take a closer look at this group. If you would like, there's a PDF of this presentation down in the description, and you can annotate your own notes on top of the things that I'm telling you for your own record. So let's take a look at the bacterial biology and the most common features and some of the most important examples of those. So first of all, we know that bacteria are very small. You would need to use a microscope to see them, and even with the microscopes that you'll be using in school, most of the bacteria would appear there looking something like this. Small spheres at best. Some of them are comma-shaped. Some of them form strips of cells like so, and others still form bunches like so, like that. But the detailed structure that we can see in this diagram, most school microscopes wouldn't allow you to do so, and indeed you would need an electron microscope to see most of these features. Notice that we have a cell wall, and that's going to provide the bacterial cell with shape, and it's also going to protect it from the environment. Like all cells, it has a cell membrane which controls what goes into and out of the cell. We'll be studying that one in more detail. The contents of the cell are called the cytoplasm, where all the chemistry of the cell takes place. And then they have ribosomes, which are where bacterial cells build proteins. Now, interestingly, the genetic material of a cell takes the form of this chromosomal DNA. It's actually not a straight molecule like so, a linear molecule like in our cells, but it's actually a looping structure where one end is connected to the other. And in fact, the technical name for this single chromosome is called a nucleoid. So you might want to remember that name, a nucleoid. And on that nucleoid are the genes associated with the bacterial prokaryotic life. Bacterial cells also have circularized pieces of DNA, much smaller than the nucleoid, and these are called plasmids. And plasmids usually only carry one or two genes. And the interesting thing is that plasmids can be exchanged between one bacterial cell and another, and so we have genes being transferred from one cell to another. A very interesting idea to be seen in bacterial cells. Mobility in some bacteria is generated by a tail-like structure, which is shown in the image here, which is called the flagellum. This flagellum winds like a corkscrew and drives the bacteria forward. This isn't present in all bacterial cells. Others rely instead on these hair-like extensions that we can see here, and those create a wave-like motion. These structures called cilia. So it may be that a bacterial cell has cilia, or the bacterial cell may have flagellum, or indeed it may have both. Bacterial cells are well studied, particularly in things like disease and in food production. A famous bacteria is this one here, Escherichia coli, often abbreviated to the better known E. coli. So the species epithet is just reduced to a capital E, and then we put dot and coli. And this is a pathogen, a disease-causing organism that is found in the human intestine. Most of the time, it doesn't cause any problems, but sometimes the population gets large during periods of food poisoning, and that will cause illness. Here you can see cells which are in pairs, and this particular one is what we call Streptococcus pneumoniae. So as you no doubt guess from the name, it's associated with things like pneumonia, ear infections, and meningitis. So these two are disease-causing. And then we have this one here, which is Lactobacillus, which is mentioned on the syllabus. Now, this isn't a pathogen. Lactobacillus is actually an important bacteria in the food industry and in the process in which we form yogurt. And we'll take a look at that process later. Some of the important ways in which bacteria function is that along with the fungi, they are involved in decomposition. As just mentioned, Lactobacillus is involved in food production. It's really worth trying to remember some of these names so you can give them as examples in examination. Some of the bacteria are important for producing useful substances such as antibiotics. And later in the course, we'll take a look at a number of ways in which this can actually be achieved. But here we're quoting streptomycin as the antibiotic. Breaking down human waste in sewage treatment is an important thing in water recycling. And these water tanks that one can find in around human habitation, bacteria are important in the decomposition of the organic waste within that and the recycling of that in order to create clean water. And then this unusual situation is that in the roots of this plant here, you can see that there are these swollen objects on the roots, and these are called nodules. Now, the nodules contain nitrogen-fixing bacteria. And what they do is they take atmospheric nitrogen and they use that to convert that into forms of nitrogen which can be used by the plant, such as ammonia and nitrates, and those are used by the plant in order to form amino acids, a critical part of its growth. And so the interesting thing is that the bacteria are living in the roots and they're working with the plant, so they work together, which is called a symbiosis. So the nitrogen bacteria and the plant work together. The plant obtains nitrates and ammonia from the bacteria, and the bacteria obtain sugars from the plants. So both benefit from the relationship. So that's a brief view of bacteria. We'll come across these in other examples in more detail later in the course. So here's a chance for you to check your understanding of the work that we've just done on the prokaryotes. Pause the video, answer the 4 questions, take a look in the description where you'll be able to find the answers, and there you'll also have the opportunity to download the PDF, and also perhaps you could subscribe to the channel at that point as well. Give this video a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it.